Welcome back to Headgears to Handshakes, episode 4. I'm here with Joe Savino. He's one of the co-founders of Wrestlers in Business Network. Had a successful wrestling career, a very successful career after wrestling, and we're just going to talk to him a little bit. So, Joe, first of all, thanks for coming on this podcast.
Yeah,
I know you're busy,
my
weekend.
Pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah. First thing I want to do is just talk about what wrestling did for you. What's your story with wrestling? How you got started, and all of that.
Yeah, certainly. So my story, like many, is driven by a mentor, a neighbor in my neighborhood. Was a very successful high school wrestler. I grew up in Long Island, and I went to a very successful high school wrestling team. We wore the robes back in the day, and marched out. We weren't allowed to laugh. It was all serious. So he was just a fantastic wrestler. He was maybe 8 or 10 years older than me. I'd go watch him wrestle, and I said, I think I want to do that. So that's how it started. Joined the junior high team, and then of course went through the normal progression. Joined the high school team, and had a pretty good high school career. Did well. I grew up in Long Island, New York, in a little town called North Belmore. So that's kind of how I got started.
Do you have like a memory from wrestling that really sticks out to you?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. And of course you might know that us wrestlers seem to remember the ones that we didn't win. But people say to me, how'd you do in high school? And I say, I was a state finalist. Now, we know what that means, right? It means I lost in the finals. Otherwise, you say I was a state champ. But my memory, I have so many great memories of wrestling, but probably it would be the coaches that impacted my life. I had a really spectacular high school coach, he was, Hall of Fame coach, Kenny Hunt. A lot of really good people, in my team and in my school. And then, of course, I was fortunate to win some good tournaments and make friends and build a reputation. Helped me get into college, where, of course, I forged additional skill sets and helped me launch a career.
Well, what are some things that maybe your coach said to you that stuck out that you obviously learned hard work, perseverance just through the sport of wrestling, but are there any words or words of encouragement that he shared with you that stuck with you?
We're talking about a high school coach, right, and a high school kid. So he would say words to me or things to me like, I would be seated third in a tournament, maybe my sophomore or maybe my junior year even, and he'd say, hey, I had a lot of kids win from that seed. You got to believe you could win from there, Joe. And I say, yeah, but I'm third seed. I got to wrestle the second seed, and then I got to wrestle the number one guy. And he'd say, yeah, I've had a lot of guys win from that seed, Joe. You got to wrestle them all. So, that's the kind of thing. It's interesting. You say that to me now, and you ask me now, and it's a long time ago, and that's the first thing I remembered, that you got to win from where you are. So there could be a lot of things against you, but you have to win from where you are. And that's kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, and then you go on to Rhode Island, and you're looking for a career, and you're finding a way to win where you are, right?
You got to win,
and
right,
so
exactly.
What was that transition like when you went from, being a college wrestler to now you got to figure out what you're doing with the rest of your life, win from where you are? What was that process like for you?
Well, it was very fortuitous that my college coach, unbeknownst to me for 2 years, was actually a full-time financial advisor running a financial firm. It never even occurred to me. I was just a freshman and sophomore in college. I just was trying to be an All-American. And one day I said, what do you do all day before practice? And he said, I'd like to talk to you about that. And my junior year, he offered me an internship. So I began as an intern at the company that I then spent 48 years with. So you're talking to a guy that is a strong proponent of internships and connecting our college coaches, alumni, connecting us all. Because without that, I just don't know which way my path would have went. But I did that internship. I did it the next year. I made money. I graduated. You got to keep in mind, it was the 70s. It was a little confusing. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to maybe go travel in Europe. I was going to take off with my girlfriend, who's now my wife of 45 years. So I just wasn't certain. But I stuck with the internship. He convinced me to stay with it. Probably subconsciously, I was trying to win where I was. And then I went full time. And then I did well, fortunately. I moved back to Long Island, where I developed a business in Manhattan. I opened up an office. I then moved to Princeton, New Jersey, where I opened a new office, became what's commonly known as a managing partner, and then we built that into a fairly large, significant organization.
And you've been able to help a lot of wrestlers in the position you're in. And I just look back at what you're telling me, and it really started with the mentorship and the connection of that coach and that advice.
Right.
And him probably pushing you and having you stick with it. Is that maybe what you reflected back on when you decided and started talking about Wrestlers in Business Network with some of the other founders?
So maybe subconsciously, but not consciously. But I will tell you something. I was working on a very large account. I was in downtown Manhattan. I was young. Let's say I was in my early 30s, and this was going to be my real first big client accomplishment. And this gentleman I was talking to, he was just being a tough hombre. If I said black, he said white. He was just being difficult. And I looked behind him, and on his bookshelf was the classic statue of the guillotine hold. And I looked at that statue and I said, "Why is that on your shelf?" And he said, "I was a college wrestler." I said, "So was I." I said, "Why don't we talk wrestling?" We then went off and talked wrestling. And then he said, "Hey, I'm going to start something with you. Can I do 3/4 of it now and add on the later?" I said, "Yes." And we signed the papers right there. I walked out that door and I said, "Wrestling made me some money today." So, but getting back to your question, so I'm just a proponent of internships. I'm a proponent of student athletes in general. Of course, I hired a lot of wrestlers. I think maybe I hired some just because they were wrestlers. Maybe I shouldn't have. So that whole connection has just been a big part of my entire life. Both my sons wrestled. One of them joined our firm. So it's just been it's a theme in our family and our friendships. And of course, the WIBN was a perfect fit for me then, because here we are trying to help people get connected. It's do business with wrestlers. It's help get kids into wrestling. It's helping kids graduate out of wrestling into the real world. 2 years ago, our chapter did Life After High School Wrestling. And we did a whole night at Rider University. We had admissions officers. We had the Navy was there. We had the Carpenters Union. We had a law firm there. And we just talked about life after wrestling. So a lot of these parents said, "Hey, that really helped our kids." So that's the kind of things WIBN can, help in your community.
Yeah, I love that, and I've heard I've heard countless stories of the difference that you've made. Is there some that stand out to you? Some kids that maybe you got further ahead in life that you set up with an internship or you gave some advice to that are now really successful?
There are a couple, right? But maybe let me start with this. We have a good team. So, I happen to have a good board of people there that are smart. They're in a lot of different industries. So I get some good input. I might be the head of the organization, but they're the heart. And from that, we've been able to impact a lot of people together. But we helped a Princeton University wrestler, and we hired him as an intern on our board, which was just kind of interesting, right? So he actually served on our board, came to all the meetings. We paid him a small stipend. We did that last year again with a kid from a D3 school, TCNJ, the College of New Jersey. I've had a number of kids who I spoke to, would talk to, and they didn't necessarily choose the path or even with one of our members, but they've often said, "Hey, Joe, that was terrific." But I do have one in particular that I interviewed and found, I didn't know it at the time, but they were a wrestler. And of course, I invited them into the firm, and I pretty much told my business team, I said, and they would laugh. They go, "Joe, we know we're hiring him. He was a wrestler. We know you by now." Anyway, fast forward 35, probably almost 38 years later, he's now my financial advisor, all right? So it's the teacher becomes the student, and we still talk about this to this day. We talk about it, and he says, "Hey, I'm sure glad we got connected." So there's just so much of that fortunately we're in the best fraternity, right? It's a big fraternity. That's the whole point of Wrestlers in Business. You hopefully would feel comfortable and feel like you're going to get a fair shake, and you're going to deal with the guy who cut down trees in my backyard, and his I didn't know at the time, his son was training in our high school. I was a volunteer coach at the time, and the guy who owns the tree cutting service said to me, I saw the kid, and I said, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And his dad said, "Yeah, he told me you kicked his butt pretty hard in practice recently. I said, oh, God, I don't think it was me. I think it might have been somebody else. So, that just goes on and on and on, And fortunately for me, I have two boys. They both wrestled, both pretty accomplished, went to Ivy League schools, wrestled there. So it's really impacted us on a lot of levels.
So obviously made a difference for you. You continue to make a difference with it. If you could look 10 years down the road, where would you want Wrestlers in Business Network to be?
Oh, I really like that. First of all, I'd like us to have a chapter in every major market in America, right? We have about 25 chapters now. We could easily hold another 50, and that would even, and that's just, and they could even have little sub-chapters, but we could easily double. We should have a WIBN chapter in every major market, especially, of course, if there's a college that supports wrestling. That's, a big challenge. I'd like to see us nationalize our networking. I'd like to be able to have our members go onto a website and click in, I need help with. Put in the name, put in the issue, and then up comes a list of national people. Because, with technology, you can do business all over the country. You could hire somebody who's in another state, do Zoom. So I'd like to see us really develop this concept of network. I have some challenges around multiple WIBN locations in states that should have more than one. So we're in New Jersey. We have 8 million people. We're a big wrestling state. We have one state tournament. Jersey, New York, PA, we're a little hotbed of wrestling. We could hold multiple WIBN. So I see in hot markets of wrestling and large population, multiple WIBN chapters. And I think we need a chapter in every major market.
I agree, and just your stories, just how much of a difference it made for you in your life.
In my own right.
Even continuing, right?
To this day.
Your financial advisor.
I know.
Was from WIBN, was from the connection through you.
Exactly. Exactly.
How much of a difference would it make if more people started, started chapters?
I know. It could literally be wild. It could be wildly successful, right? How cool would it be that somebody needs help on something, maybe they don't have an expert in their community on that, and they just go in and they find a person who's already going to have an elevated trust relationship. And we all know it's all about trust. It's all about having somebody you could trust. The old expression, nobody cares what you know until they know how much you care. That I know I'm a big guy in cliches, but it would just elevate that before you even began. It would have a strong common interest, and I think it could really be successful. I think we're on to something. I really think it could be great.
So if I'm somebody and I'm listening to this right now, and maybe I just want to make a difference. What's been sort of making a difference for some of these kids? What does that meant to you?
Well, there's all kinds of rewards you get out of life, and the intrinsic reward of seeing seeing someone grow, and then they have something good happen, and then they call you, and they say, "Hey, I just want to say thanks." That's big. That in my life, that's big. So along the way, on top of that, it could have financial rewards. It certainly could be intrinsic rewards. It could be motivating. Makes just a richer life. That's kind of what I see.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really, really do mean that. You've made a huge difference. I love WIBN.
Thank you.
I mean, this is something I'm really proud to be a part of. So
yeah, that's awesome.
I'll leave you with this one last message. If you look at the camera, if you're just telling somebody that's in a WIBN chapter now that wants to step it to the next level, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Oh my! So here's a couple of things I'd say. There are hundreds of ex-wrestlers of my generation, and they often say, I'd like to give back. Well, it's time to give back. It's time to do something. It's time for what wrestling gave to you. Wrestling did so much for me. I actually think I could do some things for wrestling now. I have some skill sets, and my generation has that. So first of all, it's time to step up and do something. And I might suggest one of the places would be join or start a WIBN chapter. It's simple. The simple advice I would give you is this. Get a handful of folks that they're sort of wrestling friendly. Start with an informal, a little informal get together, state a little bit of a mission, what you like to do, take on a little project, get some help. We got a lot of good people at the NWCA that can help you launch this. We got a cookbook how to do it. And then I'd say, get started. That's what I would say.
I think you nailed it. That might be a mic drop for you, but we appreciate you tuning in. Headgears to
It's my
Handshakes.
pleasure.
Joe Savino, love to hear it.
Thank you. Pleasure.